Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Monday Update. Today we're talking about the heating and cooling system, the HVAC system, and the church and what we're going to do with that. And then we're also going to look at our pews and how we're going to kind of restore those pews to make sure that they're comfy, they don't crack as much. We have in studio, I guess, in-house. I don't know what to say anymore. So I feel like a pro right now. We have Alan with us. And Michael is in the screen virtually. His name is just appearing. His camera cannot show up. But I think Alan and I agree that this is probably the best we've seen him in years. So
thank you, Father. I appreciate that.
That's his better side. Yeah. So, well, awesome. So let's first look at just our HVAC, the heating and cooling system. Everyone kind of knows when they walk into the church where those are at. They're in those metal radiator things, I guess you want to call them. They're kind of tan, I think. Those are really our heating coils. Our current is a heating coil system.
A fan coil system.
Fan coil system. Okay. Yeah. Clearly, my degree is not in engineering or this at all. So, but I would say, I mean, the two of us were in these meetings. This was the most talked about topic, I think.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. It was, the focus of our group. One of the focus was the sound, and the system is working okay, but it's very old, and so we thought let's just get new fan coil units. But as we spoke with the engineers, they said that's not going to work. So I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I think this is our third design that we've had. We had what they called a variable refrigerant system, which was throwing everything out. And with this system, we could at least save some of what we got, like the chiller is okay, and the boiler system. But and we did a lot of research. We pushed back the engineers a lot because the numbers are awfully. It's a heavy cost, and so we were concerned about it. And but what we really came down to, if we really wanted to address the sound, the noise, we really had limited options. And ideally, if we had enough room in a tunnel, the forced air system, but our church does not handle the ductwork.
Yeah.
So it's just very, very limiting.
Yeah. I joked earlier that the engineers have blocked Alan's number because of all the amount of phone calls. So, and Michael said that wasn't a lie. So I think we're on to something there. Yeah. I'm glad to know that's an option now, though. No, I'm just kidding. I would never. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. A lot of this that sound was really kind of the big thing. If you kind of walk into church, there's kind of a white noise that's kind of present all the time. It's just a humming noise from the fans being kicked on and kicked off, because what's really happening is like hot and cold water, depending on the time of the year, is circulating throughout our building. Right. And then a coil or fan is blowing that hot or cold out. And so to get rid of that humming was really really important for our space, because there's so much area that noise can just bounce off of. It just keeps reverberating over and over again.
And if you're in church at Mass and there's a lot of people in there, I thought this isn't so bad. But when I went in there and there was nobody in the church, there's just a constant hum. So it was just very, very evident.
For this Lent and then Advent, we've had to do confessions in that back, kind of what we call the cry room right now, confessional. But it's weird the way we have to do it because of COVID. The people have to be outside, the priest has to be inside. And so we set the sound machine up, and I want to see how loud it was. So I was like walking up the center aisle of the church, and the sound machine was actually quieter than the heating and cooling system, the fans blowing, So it's like, well, we already have a sound machine going, like constantly. And that's the problem. So,
yes, that's right.
Yeah. And then you mentioned a little bit, someone asked, why didn't we just put forced air? that's what we kind of use in any building. And really, ideally, if we were building a brand new church, we'd put in forced air. Right. But our tunnels, the ductwork, to get all of that air through just had to be massive. And we just couldn't bend it on the tunnels. It just wouldn't have, unless we were going to dig an entire basement, which we said there's no way we're going to dig underneath this church. So this is really, we were kind of stuck between two options. Both are good options.
challenge you run with, excuse me, Father, I was just going to add to that.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
With the fan coil units is that they do tend to be noisy, more noisy than a chilled beam will not be, which is what we're proposing. And it's not as comfortable. The air tends to be more drafty. And, the closer you are, the more you feel and hear it, as well as it's less controlled. You don't get as much coverage from those units, as much even coverage. Yeah. So that's one of the many reasons why we're proposing the chilled beams. Like you guys said, we don't have space for ductwork. If we had our druthers, we would use forced air, and but we don't. The tunnels aren't big enough. The locations for distribution wouldn't be in the right places. They'd all be underneath the aisles, and that wouldn't reach other areas of the space. So, what we're proposing are these chilled beams, and what it does is it takes that mechanical noise out of the space. And you want me to show an image of that?
Do you have that? Yeah. If you got one, that'd be great.
I do. But I'm sorry.
That's okay. You got like a million tabs going. It's not like you're working with detailed things.
Okay. Are you seeing that now?
No. We're at the same picture.
Is it moving?
It is moving.
Yes, it's moving.
Oh, okay. So we're seeing. Okay. I didn't know you were.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah.
There it is, on the left.
Okay. So, what we're working on are these units here. Let me zoom in on them here at the base of the columns. And so right now you've got metal cabinet fan coil units that are sitting there. And what we're going to do is replace them with a mechanical unit, but it will be underneath a stone enclosure. So so the column base becomes all stone.
Oh, that's great.
And it'll have a removable panel and a removable grill on top so that you can service these units. You can pull them out and not have to have a stonemason on the job, but they'll all be enclosed in these stone bases to the columns. Okay.
Great. Yeah, I think what's nice about that is this helps us kind of with an architectural thing. Michael, you mentioned early on in our meetings that the columns are these beautiful stone columns, and then you get to the bottom and they're rested on a really small faux marble, and now it looks kind of rough because it's been beaten up a lot near people.
Yeah.
And then we have those fan coils around it, and you're like, my goodness, this beautiful church has these kind of eyesores in some ways. And so this would be a really nice way to house them, but also to kind of make that column look really like it's sitting on something strong. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think so. You've got those massive stone columns coming down to kind of a small base, and this gives it a little bit more visual presence,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, we're going to go with, it's called a chilled beam system, and it's going to be some hybrid. There's going to be some blowers still in the church, because some places, particularly in the sanctuary, where we can't kind of run this new piping, we're going to keep using the older system. But the good news is they're compatible. So that's really helpful.
Right.
So how does a chilled beam system work?
It's doing a similar thing where it's pumping refrigerant. In this case, it's water. We've got a boiler and we've got a chiller. So it's either hot water or chilled water, and running air across the coil and introducing it into the space. Awesome. The other element that we're introducing is fresh air. When this building was built, and really up until probably very recently past, buildings weren't required to have fresh air. And so we are introducing that into the church, which is pretty timely now with COVID and everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
So that will be an improvement as well.
Yeah. So in some ways it's doing the same function, and it's recycling the air by just the simple natural airflow that occurs when you kind of heat and cool air in a certain area. and then, but it's taking that mechanical blower out.
Yes.
And so it's going to evenly distribute all of that. It's just going to kind of, I don't know, it sounds magical to say, it's just going to float the air into the space in a really
more level dispersion.
Yeah, like a simple dispersion instead of that forced kind of dispersion that we're kind of used to. Yeah. And I think you're right. Well, go ahead. What were you going to say, Michael?
Well, we'll just be conditioning the lower 10 feet of that space. You know, we're not going to, and that will help to stratify the air that way. And then when you all were talking about sound, you know, it is, you know, if you go in there, you kind of have to listen for it, but you hear it. And what that is it really does cause fatigue when you're trying to listen, and you're trying to listen over that hum of the system. And I think you'll be really pleased when that's all cleared up and you don't have to work over the top of that noise.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree. That white noise does cause fatigue. Again, like with the confessionals, like I'll sit there for 2 hours for Lent. Then, you know, on Saturdays, we've been doing the same thing, sit there for an hour. And there's a huge difference whenever I don't need to use a sound machine.
Yeah.
It's just your brain is constantly processing it. Yeah.
You know, our sound engineer, I thought, explained it. This is where I kind of had an aha moment. He said that, you know, no matter what we do in that church, if we go back to the fan call units and have that sound, we will not improve the sound, you know, but very little. And he said what happens is, you know, as you have sound, you turn the volume up. And that's not what you want to do with this technology.
Yeah.
So, you know, in order for us to reduce that noise and have the sound be to where people are going to be able to understand it better, you know, your options are limited.
Yeah.
You know, Alan, one of the things he said was, we will fail.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did.
That if people are expecting that sound system to overcome the mechanical system, the HVAC system, it won't. You know, we'll spend a lot of money on a sound system and it won't work any better than it did before.
Right. And he said volume, it's not a matter of turning it up.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's where it gets to competing.
Yeah. It's like when your kids are arguing in the back of the car and you try to turn the volume up to get them. No, it doesn't. They just get louder. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. You know, with that, introducing the fresh air, it's really timely for kind of this COVID time, you know, having that instead of recycling the air, getting new air, constantly moving air in and out to make sure that it's fresh, it doesn't get stale, and that that bacteria doesn't just hang there. Awesome. Is there anything else? You know, I think we talk about, is this system going to run efficiently? Maybe I think there's a question.
Well, that's a great question. I think that's one of the things that we, you know, are we going to be more effective and more, and with the new technologies, yes, we do anticipate to have a nice effectiveness or reduction in our costs. We don't know how much.
Right. Well, yeah.
But, you know, we do the new technologies, and with the fan call units, you get less moving parts. You know, it will make a difference.
Yeah.
And it will have better controls.
Yes.
So we should be able to dial the system in.
That's what I'm looking forward to. I think there's a couple of days of the year when we have to turn the system on cold or on heat, you know, and we're going to be able to shrink that gap pretty significantly, which will be really nice to kind of work with that. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, I think it's really the best option to minimize the sound, to give us a nice, even temperature throughout the church, and to also really make some improvements architecturally and visually on the buildings,
and have a cost savings or cost reduction.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so now that we're flying through St. Joe's, this is a dream of mine. So, let's shift. Unless Michael, do you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I was just trying to get lined up for our next discussion.
Good. Yes, he knows what's coming. Let's talk about the pews.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead,
Michael. What are we doing with the pews?
Well, as we surveyed the building, we looked at the condition of the pews, and we had a company come in from Wisconsin to look at them, kind of assess them, and similar to the cathedral in Evansville, the pew backs and the seats were pretty well shot. You know, they're pretty thin material. As you know, the backs are split, the seats are shot, and so we're going to replace everything in between the pew ends. The pew ends are wonderful. They're priceless. You know, we were not, and they're also, the pews are pretty uncomfortable. You know, the seat back is very straight up and down, and the seat itself is very short. It's about an inch shorter than what is normal and so where it hits your leg is just, it's uncomfortable. So we're going to change that angle of the back. We're going to extend the seat bench a little bit. They'll still be upholstered benches. And then we also noticed that the spacing of the pews varied. And if you look across, you can't see it here, but if you look across the existing conditions, some of these pews over here don't align with these pews. Mm-hmm. And something has gotten off over time. But probably the bigger thing is that they're narrower than 36 inches front to front. And you really need that kind of space nowadays. So we're going to respace them to be more comfortable. So,
and to Michael, with the kneelers, if you kneel down and the kneeler and the pew behind you is up, you either knock it off, you have to get up and put it down because your feet hit it.
That's a real hassle for tall guys like you and me, Alan, right?
That's right.
What was the other thing? Pew ends. Oh, well, and then we're also incorporating some handicap accessible seating and dispersing it throughout. And this isn't a great diagram to show that, but there's a couple of seats there, or a seat on either side of the aisle. Actually, this drawing hasn't been completely updated, but they're distributed throughout the assembly, so that if you choose to sit on the main aisle, you sit there. If you want to sit further up, you can sit further up. If you want to sit all the way in the back, you can. And that's really it's not only a code requirement, but a welcoming, gesture,
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's unpack that. So we're going to take the pews and basically we're going to take the ends off of them and then lean the seat back a little bit. Right. And I will say they are really uncomfortable. I mean, as a man who was both wise and infinitely good, but also very portly, they're uncomfortable. I mean, I'm really glad I got my presider's chair, which is very much deeper. And then I also, so we're going to lean them back so that they're a little bit more reclined, because I think that's kind of, and in some ways it's kind of neat. It shows how much this town has or America or our time has changed, and how that reflects on our bodies, because we're bigger people, both height wise and kind of width wise, or circumference maybe is a better way to measure that. And so we lean back. That's just our much more normal posture for us. We have a longer leg base because we're taller. And I think those are just kind of natural progressions of kind of getting to live here.
And they've held up well over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. I also thought it was interesting, we were getting ready to film this, and this is the Monday after Palm Sunday when we're recording, and we'll launch it on Easter Monday. But there was a moment at, I think it was the 6 a.m. I think it was a 6 a.m. mass I had this weekend. It all kind of blurs together. I mean, unfortunately, I had everyone stand up, and it was, it's Palm Sunday, and so a little bit different. So some people tried to sit for at the wrong time, normal and natural. But the noise, the cracking and the creaking from the pews, like you couldn't, it just took a little while to all rest out, and so we're really going to fix a lot of that by adding some supports in there, and those backs. If the wood split, you really can't save that.
We tried to do that, and our renovation guy said, "Nah, you can't do that." So we'll replace it.
Yeah.
What we hope to do though is, and we don't have a good plan yet, but my understanding is that the backs are glued solid pieces together, but the seats are individual boards.
Oh, okay.
So we will try to. I do have an individual who's going to help me see if we can salvage them and to see if someone wants this material.
Yeah.
To the best we can.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll keep you up to date on that because that'd be really interesting.
If anybody would like to have some.
I mean, because I think that'd be really awesome. And, I think it's also really, we can't keep talking about COVID. It's kind of the time, it's everyone's at the forefront. COVID, those chemicals have really eaten away at our pews. I mean, that finishing in our pews is almost gone from just having to clean it every day, after every service.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so I guess we probably shouldn't use like acetic acid. I mean, pennies will disappear when we clean our pews. It's amazing. That's a joke, everyone. That is a total joke. But it's just wearing. If you rub it down, people go through basically after every mass and take a rag and wipe it down. It's just gonna wear that finish down, and so it's gonna be. We would have to have pulled them out to refinish them anyway.
Right.
This way we kind of can make them more comfortable, put some seating in there for the handicap accessible.
And use the historical beautiful ends.
Yeah, and keeping those ends because, I think, Michael, you mentioned, like, we couldn't afford to recreate those.
No way.
No way.
So, yeah. So I think they even mentioned giving me a whittle and just trying to whittle them in my backyard to see if I could make enough. But they saw my first one, so it kind of looked like a macaroni picture frame that I gave my mom one time. So fantastic. Yeah. And I love that when we talked about the handicap seating, I know, I think this joke came up that at one of the parishes you worked on, Michael, they had what they called the wheelchair corral. Was that what they called it?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they had just this section where they put the wheelchairs there. And so this way, if, grandma and grandpa come in and want to sit with their family, well, we shouldn't just quarantine them off in the wheelchair corral, being able to kind of sit them at a pew that's really
a place throughout the church too.
Yeah. Yeah. But now widening things, making them kind of more comfortable, extending things out, adding some handicap accessible seating, that is going to change the number of seats. Do you know how many seats we're going to lose overall in the plan?
I think we lose around 90 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All of those things affect your capacity.
Yeah.
And, the gathering space growing a little bit into the back of it.
Yeah.
And then for the overflow, we would be able to have seats in the back, or in the gathering spaces.
Right. Those,
which
that's
would not be included.
Yeah, I should say, that's our ordinary seating capacity. But we'll be able to add some things back for special events, Easter, Christmas, things like that. But honestly, I mean, I think that's kind of normal. I mean, we're not at the point of right now where if we lose 94, people are going to be standing in the back of church.
Right.
With my preaching, I'm sure that's going to come about. Yeah, that's right. Do I think too highly of myself?
That's if you go become a talk show host.
That's right. Yeah, if I continue this career on, I'll be famous. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think we think that the value added of allowing more seating into for handicap accessible and also making those pews more comfortable is really going to pay dividends going forward. And really, it's a good trade-off. So, yeah.
And it's too, throughout on the pews and as well as the whole process, we really focused on the historical value and our the preservation of what we have and not try to go modern. So, for example, even the pillars and the fan call units and the chill beam units, we really tried to focus on, this church and the historical presence, historical value of it.
Yeah.
And integrating those elements into the architecture, right, Alan?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to be faithful to what we do have, but then also realistic that there are kind of problems that need addressing that are going to have to be changed. Things have to be changed, but it's like, what do we have to change? And then how can they make us enhance the church? Or how do we just keep faithful? And for the pews, that's maintaining those pew ends, which are really the historical value for a lot of people. And then for the HVAC, it's taking those and making sure that the new system looks right and is integrated and is faithful to the rest of the space, not just kind of sitting out there. So fantastic. Well, thank you so much for Michael for joining us again, and thank you for letting us fly through St. Joseph's. It's a really cool picture. I'm sure not a lot of folks get to see that. So.
Yes. Enjoyed it, you guys.
Yeah. So, and we will hopefully keep moving on the capital campaign and know of our prayers, and we'll see you all soon. Okay.